Welcome to Caregiver Counsel, Elder Law Insights with Tieesha Taylor.
Well, welcome back to Caregiver Counsel, Elder Law Insights. I am Tieesha Taylor, founder and CEO of Elderly Care Law Firm in South Florida, where we provide compassionate generational legal services to families who are navigating Medicaid, guardianships, probate, and long-term care. Excited today because we have a guest, Isabelle Miranda. She's the Vice President of Sales and Marketing at Right at Home. Isabelle has over 20 years of experience supporting seniors with a focus on specialty care, including Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and transition care. Isabelle has over 20 years of experience supporting seniors with a focus on specialty care, including Alzheimer's, dementia, Parkinson's, and transitional care. Today, we're talking about what happens after a loved one comes home from the hospital and how families can make that transition safe and sustainable. Welcome, Isabelle.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for being a part of this. Let's just get to the point. After a loved one comes home from the hospital, what tends to catch families off guard the most?
So it all depends on what caused them to land in the hospital in the first place. Most common thing that's been going on lately, those are falls. Somebody, has unsteady flooring at the home and they mismanage their steps. They end up on the floor and they can't get up. We've all seen the commercial, I've fallen and I can't get up.
Yeah.
Usually they end up hospitalized, and that is just, the facility trying to make sure that nothing happened to them during that fall. They check them, make sure there's just not an underlying root cause of why they fell. Once they clear them, they end up in some sort of rehab facility, right? Because now therapy wants to get involved and make sure that this person is able to be back home, manage their stairs, their floors safely, and get around independently. So it could be something as simple as that fall that ends our seniors up in the system, if you will. But what ends up
Yes.
happening when you're in those situations is that you're actually walking a lot less than you normally would at home. You're eating differently. Your medication schedule is different. So then in some cases you end up regressing before you actually progress with all of this help that you receive. One of the things that a lot of people get caught off guard with is how long that process of being in the facility
Yeah.
actually takes and what deteriorating occurs while you're there. So that's one of the most common things that we deal with.
And what should families understand about the difference between being discharged and actually being ready to recover safely at home?
That is a great question. I'm glad you're asking that. So there's many different reasons why someone might get discharged from a facility, whether that be hospital or otherwise. Most of it would be for non-coverage of payment, meaning you don't meet one of the requirements for either your Medicaid, Medicare, or whatever the facility is billing. It could be your insurance if it's some sort of rehab. And they all have benchmarks that their client is supposed to be meeting in order to either get out of the hospital for what we call safe discharge harm or transition into another higher level of care, but it might be a step down of where they are. So basically, you want to make sure that if a therapist is coming in and offering you therapy, you are actually doing therapy. Because what they do every time you say, I don't want to walk with you today, I don't want to do OT today, is they're documenting that. And you may not be safe enough to go home, which is the whole reason why you don't participate in these exercises. You're not feeling well. You might be a little depressed, malnourished, still recovering from whatever landed you here in the first place. But all insurance and all the facility reads is that this patient is failing to participate in the programs that we offer. Then they issue you a notice of non-coverage. You gotta go. So regardless if the reasons are good, bad, accurate, or not, we always need to participate in whatever care we're there to receive in these facilities, because that's how you're going to really get the extent of your financial benefit, and you won't end up getting kicked out, as we said.
Oh, great. Thank you for sharing that. I know a lot of people didn't know that. So thank you for bringing that to our
Always go to
attention.
therapy and always do your OTPT. Anything that they tell you to participate in, make sure you do.
Participate. Make sure you're participating in that.
They're evaluating you for your insurance and for your progression notes. It all goes in your chart.
Now, what daily tasks tend to become much harder than families expect once their loved one is back home? I know they're coming in maybe from a surgery or they've been discharged for some other reason, but what do you see as some of the tasks that become much harder for families?
So, when your loved one is being discharged from a facility, the facility should give you some discharge paperwork to kind of let you know where your loved one is now. Never really translates within the home. Because what is 300 feet of walking inside your home? Do you have all your knickknacks in the way? Is your dog getting in between your legs while you're walking through now that you're home? So I think families have a hard time taking what the facility gives as instruction for safe discharge home and living the practicality of it, which is kind of where right at home comes in. What people don't expect is the new limitations. Like mom's always fixed herself a sandwich for lunch. Well, she can't use her right hand now because her ankle or her wrist is sprained from the fall. So now we need a caregiver there to make sure she can heat up the soup and she could do something differently. So I think the reality of how a person navigates in the home never looks like the discharge paperwork. So I would suggest to families to get a real good sense of what, the person providing care would need to do at the home is to maybe spend 1 or 2 nights with them because the discharge paperwork includes information based on 24-hour care. And when a person gets home, a lot of times they don't have that. So, yes, they're independent and they can request water, but can they get up and get it? They can
Yeah, yeah.
communicate their needs that they're thirsty and they can tell you that. But if they're home alone and it's 1 in the morning, are they going to try to get up without their walker and try to get that glass of water, which is the way they've done it for 20 years, but they just can't do it now because of this momentary setback. So
Hmm.
accepting that your loved one is not who they were when they went in or before they suffered this is the hardest thing for families.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I would agree. I can see that. Now, how can families start thinking about the level of care a loved one will realistically need once they're back home?
So I always tell people to tell me about their worst day and we can work backwards from there. Right at home doesn't really have any minimums, but we do have what we call a minimum package for those people that are not sure of where to start. And I always urge them, look, I've never gotten a complaint from a family member calling me at 6 in the morning screaming that they started our services too early, right? But I do get
Yeah.
those phone calls from people that they started too late. If you feel at
Hmm.
any point that your loved one would benefit from an extra set of eyes, an extra set of hands, I would get them in the home sooner rather than later for multiple reasons. One being get that person used to asking for and receiving help. The generation that we serve these days, Ms. Taylor, they don't want to ask for help and they don't want to
Yeah.
accept it. They don't want to put you out. So this really allows for that relationship to be built between the client and
Hmm.
caregiver experience. Then I
Yeah.
would suggest that you just establish a baseline, whether it's with your primary care physician or one of these house call concierge physician groups, just to make sure you have that level in place as
Hmm.
well, that your caregiver can report back and say, look, I've noticed your mom's real weak on her right side still. Maybe we need to call the doctor. And then you have that other intermediary who is a clinician that can advocate on that person's behalf and really make a
Hmm.
good, solid determination on what caregiver findings are and what a good plan of care would look like for your loved one. So, getting those two things in place would really allow a family to kind of have a security net in place. If there's an unexpected fall, we end up in a facility, you got to call, your caregivers and let them know this is where this person is and how it can help.
Hmm. Great. Now, our listeners love to hear real life examples. So, can you give an example of maybe a situation where a family thought things would be manageable at home, but challenges came up quickly, and kind of what usually change?
We had a husband and wife, and sadly he had a stroke, and he was the caregiver or, the patriarch of the family. He wrote the checks. He handled everything down to when the car gets washed on the weekends, right? Um,
Hmm.
his wife has dementia. She was being taken care of. He had caregivers in there for her, but never for him.
Hmm.
It was actually one of the caregivers that was on for his wife that said, hey, you've been a little unsteady on your feet. She went and she
Mm-hmm.
reported this. One of the family members came over for coffee dinner. And she said, hey, I noticed your dad's a little unsteady on his feet. You might want to get that checked out. Turned out after a series of checks that it was a neurological issue. He actually ended up having a stroke, and he ended up going to the hospital. But no one really worried because mom already had a team of caregivers there.
Mm-hmm.
All we did was add care when he got home. If we didn't have
Right.
a team of caregivers, then the primary caregiver who's now suffering from this health issue, uh, he would be more worried about what's going on with her than himself. He was able to focus
Yeah.
on his recovery, and we did have that success story where they both came home. They stayed independent in their home with their team of caregivers, and it was actually a caregiver that identified his problem and a caregiver that brought him home. So that is, we
Great.
joke in our sales team, but that's our why. That's why we do this.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that story.
Of course.
What types of in-home support tend to make the biggest difference in helping someone recover safely? And of course, ultimately avoid going back to the hospital.
Yeah, so that's what we'll do. We'll work. So, Right at Home does have community liaisons that we work with the discharge planners and the family. That helps us establish the baseline, and our registered nurse, which happens, in the Miami office, to be our director of operations. She overlooks the care plan to make sure that it all makes sense, right? She'll catch a detail clinically that we may, like, this medication can't be taken with breakfast, for example. We'll make
Mhm.
sure everything is carried through so that, they're successful in the home. And then we have a quality assurance process where we check in and we say, now that we're living back in the home and we have the care plan in place, is this actually something that's working, or do we need to tweak when we do certain things? Um, Once that's done, we kind of continue to emancipate the client. If we see that they're getting dressed independently, we'll keep up with those chart notes that the family can see, and we can kind of see
Mhm.
the evolution there. As far as the services that are most beneficial to people, it depends on who they were before that. If I was a
Mhm.
very social butterfly and now I'm recovering at home, a service that we provide that might be most beneficial to that person could be companionship. Let's chat. Let's talk about all the shows that you missed out, and let's play
Mhm.
bingo together, and let me walk you down to the library. That is a huge benefit. But as far as, assisting with things in the home that are personal care, meaning we lay hands on the client, that'll be everything that you can get in an assisted living. We can help with bathing, for example, to varying degrees. We
Mhm.
can help with reminders for medication management. We can help you get dressed, undressed, ready for bed. We can stand by you while you walk your dog around the block just to make sure, you don't miss
Mhm.
a ledge or something. So it's
Right.
really getting to know who the person is or who the person was before this incident occurred, and trying to
Mhm.
bring our caregivers to them that'll provide that normalcy for them.
Now, for families feeling overwhelmed in those first days after discharge, what really helps them regain a sense of control and stability?
I think just having a community resource, because right at home can't do it all, but our folks, we really create solid partnerships with people we can count on. And I think just being that resource for them and saying, look, if you're considering hospice, call this person. If you are considering this, I've got, someone that I know over there that I can put you in contact with. And just establishing rapport with the care providers so that they can help advise you on what the best next steps would be and better ways to do so. I think families need to, block out all of the noise from the internet and chat GPT and call their local community liaison, because keeping someone out of the hospital is the basis of our entire role, and out of facilities. So having somebody in your corner for free that can do that, invaluable.
Yeah, agreed. Now, how do families balance the loved one's desire to stay independent with the need for safety and consistent care? As an elder law attorney, we get a lot of clients who say, I don't want anyone in my home, and they want to remain as independent as possible. So, how do you and your company balance the loved one's desire, or how do families balance the loved one's desire to stay independent?
Well, first, we want to acknowledge that we hear them. We're not here because, we want to be here. We're here because something happened that requires us to be here. So what we do to help on our end is we offer a care match guarantee. So there's no getting around the fact that you need the services. So it's either going to be us or somebody else that's going to provide it, right? What we could do is tell you if this person was too chatty, or if this person was, not what you were looking for, you guys have nothing in common to talk about for your 8-hour shift, we can send someone in, or we can train in the home to make everyone feel more comfortable with the care that's being provided. But we usually ask families to give us 4 weeks, because the first week we're meeting new people, they're coming into your home. It's always rough. You're accepting your new normal, and now you're face to face with the fact that you need to have someone help you. But by week 2, you're like, oh, I'll just have her help me fix some lunch today, and my neighbor might come over. By week 3, I always tell people that they start adding days. It's like, well, maybe I'll have her take me to the Walgreens and I can pick up that birthday card for my friend. And then by the 4th week, they're excited that Lisa's coming on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we have plans. So I always just say, at least give us 4 weeks.
Isabelle, before we let you go, what is one final piece of advice you would want every family in this situation to hear?
Call sooner rather than later. Get an assessment done. If there is no care needed, companies, should be able to let you know, hey, look, we're at the beginning stages. But always, if you feel that your loved one would benefit from care, make the call and find out what they offer in your local area and have a plan.
Right. Okay, thank you for sharing that. And then for listeners who want to learn more about your company, your services, how can they find you? What is the best way to contact you and reach out to you?
Sure. So you can just Google Right at Home Miami. Our phone number is 305-697-9722. And we are local. And we have a great team of people here that are willing to help.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for joining us
Thank you
on
so
this
much for having
podcast.
us.
Thank
I'm
you.
really grateful for this partnership. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, thanks for listening to Caregiver Counsel, Elder Law Insights. If you're facing questions about long-term care, Medicaid, guardianship, or protecting an aging loved one, you can connect with my team at elderlycarelawfirm.com. And to learn more about in-home care support and transitional services, you can visit rightathome.net/Miami. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who might need it. We'll see you soon next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.